you. Excited to be here, and I would like to share a little bit about how University Liggett School has been navigating our remote learning, and bring you into a classroom or two so you can see what the learners have been doing. Just to give you a little bit of background of our school, University Liggett is in Grosse Pointe Woods, Michigan, a little bit outside of the city of Detroit. We have some really great connections to the city. We do some place-based learning and partnering with some of the businesses and the people from the city. But we're the oldest co-educational day school in Michigan. We are a school that has 3 campuses unified, three divisions unified in one campus. We serve about 600 learners. I have been at University of Liggett now, this is my 5th year, and I am fortunate to work with all of our staff and all of our learners as the Dean of Pedagogy and Innovation. And I also support all of our staff and students with instructional technology integration. So a little bit about me. I have been a music educator most of my life. In the past 5 years, I've transitioned to looking more closely at the way we think and learn. And of course, I draw a lot from my roots as an artist, as an arts teacher. But I have been working with Harvard's Project Zero and the Graduate School of Education in Cultures of Thinking, and connecting it to University Liggett School's project work, especially in our lower school, and how that can continue our Reggio Emilia in our pre-K and working through project work and extending it into our middle school and our upper schools. So thinking about the ways in which learners make meaning, I've adapted this visual from the Harvard's Project Zero's understanding map, and used some of our Liggett approach tenets to cater it more to our learners. And so we're going to think about how we use some of these ways of understanding in our classrooms, and thinking about how we get to know each individual learner, not only as people, but also as thinkers, and how we can individualize instruction that way. So thinking about the language that we use really helps encourage some thinking. And so thinking about the language of community and inclusiveness, and using words like ours, us, and we, thinking about how we can bring us all together in the ways in which we learn in the classroom. Noticing and naming the thinking, pointing out when kids are making connections, pointing out when they're generating new ideas, pointing out when they're asking deep questions. And then the language of initiative, thinking about how we help learners in their planning process, helping them think about what they're wondering about, what are the next steps they might need to take, and encouraging that initiative in the classrooms. And then what I have really enjoyed is conditional language, and really thinking about that there's more than one way to do something. The divergence and the ways in which we ask the learners, well, what's another way of doing it? Can you find another perspective on this? And thinking about how we can grow community, not only in the ways in which we respect other people's viewpoints, but also thinking how else you might solve something, which then will help you understand other people better. So a couple of the apps we use to continue our connection, even though we're apart, is we use Zoom to connect virtually. The Google Suite runs in all of our divisions. Soundtrap is a way for us to collaborate over distance on a piece of music. And iMovie, GarageBand, and we mentioned earlier Seesaw. That is a way for us to continue our communication and our connection with parents, teachers, learners, and our community. And so we use Seesaw as a way to collect artifacts, to provide feedback, and continue that feedback loop, because we value process as much as we value product. And so that is a way that we can continue that commitment to our learners, to continue that feedback loop even when we're apart. So one way that we provide structure in the classroom, but create opportunities for learners to make meaning, is through a graphic score project that came up. We're on our 5th week of distance learning. We anticipate another 5 weeks. And so we want to make a commitment to continue the creative process and create opportunities for musicians or all learners to make meaning through this time. So this is a graphic score that our music teacher created for learners to interpret, and asking questions like, what do you notice about this score? How might you create an interpretation of it? And how would you share it? And so thinking about, there are many different ways to interpret this, and leaving it open for the musicians to create something around it. And when we describe what we see in the graphic score, we're looking closely at the contour, we're looking closely at the texture. We're reasoning with evidence in what you see and what you hear that might make you think that. And then we're considering different viewpoints, not only from creating and listening to other people's interpretations of that graphic score, but also we're asking musicians to use the instruments that they have in their homes. And some do have pianos and guitars and basses, and you know, my son brought his double bass home from school when we left, and my other son brought his cello, my daughter has a flute, but there are homes that don't. And so how are we using our environment to create music around a graphic score such as this, and then thinking about the interpretation of it through different viewpoints was a really interesting way to view this. So this is my son. He is using one iPad with Seesaw, one iPad with GarageBand, and here is his interpretation of this graphic score. Don't forget the repeat sign. I have the opportunity to work with all of our teachers in all content areas. And so I will also share a couple of examples of our art room, and also one example of a classroom. So we have a phenomenal arts program. This is one of my great friends, Jenny Osman, and she creates the environment for kids to share their passions in the art room through visual art. And her and I have been working closely together in artful thinking and how we create opportunities for learners not only to create with visual art, but also a deeper understanding of the ways in which artists create and the why behind it. And so thinking about that, the ways that she uses visual art to make connections between understanding in the art room and then other ways of knowing, and how did she, I'm going to share an example of how she created that opportunity in our remote learning as well. And so this is one example of that. The art room is a student-centered and teacher-guided place where student voice has meaningful agency in the art room, but also it expands into other content areas and ways of knowing too. So her and I did a close look. We did a 5 senses routine with this piece of artwork, where I helped moderate the learners, and she asked questions such as describing what's there using your 5 senses. What might you see, hear, feel, and smell? But going beyond the most obvious. And so we also piggybacked on a thinking routine called looking 10 times 2. And you think about the first 10 things you see, and talk about those things. And once you get past the obvious, it makes you slow down and make more careful and detailed observations. And you push beyond your first impressions to some deeper and more detailed noticings. And then we supported that with thinking about, well, what do you see that makes you think that? And that really helps the artists look at the artist's way of expressing themselves, and then also uncovering the complexities to investigate the different parts of the piece, the artist's technique and the blending and the balancing of colors and things like that, but putting yourself into that artwork and really thinking about the ways that you would interpret it standing on the bridge, or some even thought about what it would be if you swam under the bridge in the water. So it was a really interesting way of bringing the learners in and thinking more about how they would interpret that. And so after they did this artful thinking and the thinking routines with this, the task was to create a piece of artwork that evoked other people's senses. And so using the things that we had at home, my son created this piece of artwork to really bring out what it would feel like standing in a field at dusk, and when he described it, what the trees would smell like, what the flowers would look like, the breeze blowing by and things like that. But also he talked about the blending of the colors and the ways that he used the gradient pattern in the sky to create a certain mood. And so this is a way for him to have agency to create a piece of artwork that he interpreted a certain way, and then shared that through Seesaw with his teacher, with the other families. And thinking about how we can continue to keep the privacy of our students by having a closed area where they can really get the feedback that they would like. And then also we opened the blog to only post certain things that the teacher and the learner agreed upon, to open that more toward the public too, because we want to share our creations out into the community. And one piece from our fifth grade class is, we really want to maintain those connections. And that's one thing that I think University Liggett School does very well, is know each individual learner. And I think that, our class sizes of 12 to 14 really help with that. But what can we do to continue that connection outside of school when we are separated by distance, but still connected as a community? And so litworld.org had heart maps that we could ask our learners to do, and that what Liggett does is we connect the work that the learners do to the world around them and the lives they might lead within it. And so this is a way that we could connect with each learner and think about how we can support them through this kind of social distancing and a time where we are craving connectedness. And this is a way for us to think about what really captures the heart of what we need during these times and sharing those together. And so it's a way for us to maintain connections and really think about, what we do to maintain that community that we built in the classrooms and now extend it to our homes. We want to be in the same classrooms together. All of us do. And so, thinking about what we can do to help bring that connection into our homes. So this is a piece of artwork that a fifth grade student did. And so they crave connectedness too. They love spending time with their family and their pets. And they really have enjoyed the changing of the seasons around us. And so when we connect virtually, we can connect over these heart maps and really think about, what makes us the same, also what makes us unique, and that what makes us a community of learners. So thank you.